Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this General Purpose and Administration Committee meeting of Monday, May the 10th. And I will ask everyone to observe a moment of silence. Thank you, and I will turn it over to our clerk, Becky Jameson, to give us the rules of procedure for today's meeting. Becky?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. For your information, I will be recording the minutes in eScribe this afternoon and conducting the votes. Should we have any technical issues during the meeting, please be patient as we try to resolve them. If we are unable to, then we will carry on with the meeting provided that the live streaming is still operating and all members of council, staff, and the public are able to fully participate. I will now conduct a roll call to ascertain which members of council are present. Mayor Drew is present. Councillor Watton, are you present?
I'm present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall, are you present?
Yes, I'm present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guido, are you present?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross, are you present?
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiesenbrink, are you present?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, are you present?
Present.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I can confirm that we have quorum for this meeting. I will now list the staffer who are present in alphabetical order. Adam DeBecke, Amy Coughlin, our CAO Ken Nix, Kevin Heritage, Laura Barda, Laura Garnasio, Lori Bowers, Fire Chief Mark Burney, Robin, oh sorry, I don't think Robin's on, my apologies, Shauna Cornish, and Terry Barton. Is there any member of staff present whom I did not mention? Also in attendance this afternoon are a number of delegates who will be introduced shortly. As in previous electronic meetings, I will now review the rules for the meeting. Please mute your microphone while not talking. This will avoid any background noise that may occur where you are and will avoid any echo of the audio. Also, please ensure you are in a quiet place to limit background noise when you speak. Please use headphones as this will also improve the audio quality. If you would like to speak, please use the hand raise function in the meeting. The mayor will then call upon you when it's your turn. For members of council, if you leave your computer, please let the mayor know so that quorum can continue to be met. When moving or seconding a motion, please use the hand raise function in the meeting and the mayor will announce who the mover and seconder are. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel. We will be using electronic voting process during tonight's meeting. At the appropriate times, I will announce that the voting is open and council members will be asked to make a selection. Once everyone has voted, I will announce that the vote is closed. If for any reason a council member is unable to vote, please announce your vote verbally and say in favor or against. If the electronic voting system stops working for any reason, we will revert back to a verbal vote whereby the mayor will ask if there is any member of council opposed to the motion. If you are opposed, please state your name and that you are opposed. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That now concludes my opening statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I'll now call, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the nature thereof? Seeing and hearing none, I'll move to announcements from council and staff. Councillor Watton, I believe you had an announcement.
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to provide a quick, very brief update on the Port Perry 150. Just to mention that, generally speaking, we're getting very good reception to all our ideas, and businesses are starting to come on board with different ideas. I'll just give an example, such as Clearwater Pools will be offering free 150 beach balls for any with any purchase at their business, and something like the Wee Tartan may be offering something such as discover what your tartan colors are, and just things like that. We're certainly hopeful that come the 20th of May that some of the restrictions will be lifted. But again, we're still planning everything through the COVID lens and basically through the restrictions that we currently have in place. So again, hopefully some will be lifted. Our retailers will be able to be open, and our restaurants and so on. We did have 8 entries for the flag and banner contest. And while I'm not going to announce the winner, winner has been chosen, and we're just waiting for final contact with her before I put it out in the public. So I think they should be the first to know. Anyway, that concludes my comments. I'd be happy to take any questions if there were any. But again, plans are moving forward, and it's shaping up to be a great summer with lots of things for our community to celebrate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And are there other members of council who have an announcement? We've got some staff members, no other members of council. I have a few announcements. I had a very busy week last week. On Thursday, the small urban GTHA mayors met with the Ontario Solicitor General Sylvia Jones, Minister Christine Elliott, and Dr. Chen in a Zoom meeting for updates on COVID and the vaccine distribution. The takeaways from that meeting are that the province will have 65% of adults vaccinated with their first shot, and many seniors will have had their second shot by the end of May. And on or by May 25th, anyone 18 and over will be eligible for their first shot. And more Moderna vaccine is coming with this week sometime. And they are studying the radius of travel for Pfizer vaccine and are looking into getting school-age children vaccinated as well. Friday morning, I participated in a broadband announcement by MP Ryan Turnbull of $1 million in federal funding to bring high-speed internet to over 4,500 underserved households in several communities in Durham. In and around Scugog, we will see better service in Blackstock, Manchester, Burton Station, and Nesselton Station. And we all look forward to these improved services within the next 12 months, hopefully. And that will help our agricultural businesses, our other businesses, and those that are working from home, and our students. So thank you to the federal grant and the local providers. Friday afternoon, the small urban GTHA mayors met with Prime Minister Trudeau. Questions asked, including broadband, and the answer was he recognizes the need to connect. It needs to be affordable, but still allow for competition and look for matched dollars provincially and federally. There was a question about cannabis, and he recognizes the slippage in the legislation and the disconnect with Health Canada, municipalities, and the police. Health Canada has COVID top of mind right now, but will respond to our concerns. Housing, and in particular affordable housing, he suggested the supply needs to be increased. A concern arose about the fact that 1% surcharge on foreign investors was not enough, and the PM offered that he felt a larger surcharge wouldn't fix the problem. He felt that a stronger stress test for mortgages would be helpful. A question arose about vaccine passports. The PM did not agree that that would be a helpful solution. On COVID, 3 million doses arriving this week and 50 million doses by the end of June. The PM asserted that international travel restrictions were adequate. My question on guns and gangs, my question was, passing the enforcing municipal bylaws to restrict is problematic as offenders do not respect jurisdictional boundaries. We need more inspectors and control at the border, and stronger laws and support for police to address gun issues. Expressed concern about the early release of individuals who are convicted, putting significant safety issues in our communities. The PM offered that military assault weapons are banned. There is a need for stronger elements at the border and tougher penalties. He said there are loopholes regarding weapons and that are brought in. Weapons are brought in legally and then sold illegally. I'm sorry, not brought, bought legally and sold illegally. They have invested a lot in community programs. It was agreed that the vast majority of owners are responsible. And further, This week is a big week for two of our community heroes. It is Nurses Week this week, and it is also Police Week. And how appropriate that our Inspector Ryan Connolly from North Division is here with some of his officers. And I don't have any other announcements from council, and so I would ask Amy Coughlin from the library. Amy?
Thank you, Mayor Drew. I just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I just wanted to, following up, I guess, a little bit on your broadband statement. While we're waiting for broadband, the library board has approved a pilot project of wireless hotspot lending. So we're hoping we'll be able to get the devices and roll that out by the end of May. And that will allow for residents of Scugog to take a wireless hotspot home for a week at a time and connect to the internet with their devices that way. We'll also have a number of Chromebooks available if people don't have a phone or another device to use with the wireless hotspots. So we're hoping that that can help people in our community who currently either can't afford internet or don't have sufficient technology in their area for high-speed internet.
Thank you. Good news. Ms. Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Drew. May 11th is the Provincial Day of Action on Litter, and as we do our part to help stop the spread of COVID-19, there are also actions we can take to put litter in its proper place while physically distancing. On behalf of the Public Works Department, we encourage residents to help pick up litter around their neighborhoods while on their daily walks. Just remind people to please remember to stay safe by wearing gloves and staying physically distanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cornish. And I'll call on Chief Burney. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor Drew. I have 3 announcements. If you could.
You're very quiet, Chief.
Oh, is that any better, Mayor Drew?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 announcements. If you could indulge me for a minute or two. The first one I'd like to speak to is COVID-19. The active case count in the township of Scugog is presently at 11, a significant reduction since my last report. Again, I need to urge Scugog residents to stay the course and continue to comply with provincial health measures. The sacrifices you are making daily has been the difference between widespread COVID-19 illnesses in our community and the lowest case count across the region. Township amenities that remain open for exercise purposes during our time right now include parks and trails for walkthrough, playgrounds, and the dog park. And as a reminder, I'd like to remind the folks that playground equipment is not sanitized. And then township amenities that remain closed include public picnic sites, public picnic tables, and public boat launches. The closure of our public boat launches has placed some additional stress on our Scugog boaters. To assist our boating community in resolving some of their concerns, the township continues to temporarily suspend the zoning restrictions relating to storage of boats on residential driveways. Next, I'd like to speak to vaccine eligibility and add to what you've already added, Mayor Drew. On May 7th, the Durham Region Health Department expanded eligibility for the COVID-19 vaccine to include essential workers who cannot work from home and are within the group 2. And beginning tonight, May 10th at 9 p.m., individuals 40 and older, or who will be turning 40 in 2021, as well as to people in the at-risk health conditions group, can begin to book appointments. And obviously, to book appointments, go to the Durham Regent's website, durham.ca/vaccine appointments, or call the 1-888-444-5113 number. And then lastly, Mayor Drew, on May 4th, it was International Firefighters Day. a day to recognize the extraordinary courage and commitment of the women and men past and present in the fire service, and to take an opportunity to pause and reflect on the sacrifices that firefighters make to protect life and preserve property. These selfless individuals, along with many frontline essential workers, continue to provide exemplary service despite the added challenges of the pandemic. And with that, Mayor Drew, I'd ask that you stay safe, be kind to each other, and keep your apple green. Thank you. That concludes my announcements.
Thank you, Chief. I'll call on Director Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From the Community Services Department, just want to let folks know that the Scugog Summer Leisure Guide has been posted on the website. Program registration is expected to open Monday, May 17th at 7 a.m. for Scugog residents and May 24th for Durham Region residents. Pre-registration is required for all activities, and new this year, just want to note, participants are to wear masks when they are both inside and outside. All camp, aquatic, and recreation programs are subject to change depending on the provincial orders. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And I'll move now back to Council. I'm sorry, Councillor Kiesebrink, if I did not see your hand before, but I see it now, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to thank Brock Township, who this morning endorsed the Durham Dead End Road Kids motion previously passed by Scugog Council, asking Minister Stephen Lecce for better solutions rather than placing our kids on high-speed roadways for school bus pickups. Scugog parents and ourselves will continue to advocate for safety for our own as well as Ontario Dead End Road kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, presentations and delegations, and I'd like to welcome Inspector Ryan Connolly from North Division here in Port Perry and for all of Scugog, Brock, and Uxbridge. And who do you have with you today, Inspector?
First off, good afternoon, Mayor Drew. Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to our presentation today. I have with me today Acting Staff Sergeant Mark Leona. Mark is regularly the sergeant on A Platoon of North Division, and he's been in an acting role for the last month and a half. So I'm happy to have Mark with me now. And once again, thanks very much for having the two of us.
And I see Locks is on as well.
There he is right there. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He just joined us. So Locks is on the call as well. Mark's actually in my office, and Locks is right next door. So once again, thank you.
Please go ahead. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Hopefully it won't take that much time. If there's anyone has any questions at the end, please don't hesitate to ask. I just wanted to give a brief update for the North Division 2021 operational strategy for North Division and specific to Scugog as well. So one of the goals of our division this year is to improve roadway safety.
Hi, Laura. It's Robert Walker calling. I'm supposed to be tuned into the council meeting, or the general committee meeting, and I can't hear anything. I can see the agenda, but I can't hear anything that's being spoken.
We can hear you, Robert. If you'd put yourself on mute, that would be great.
That's okay.
I guess he can't hear me.
No problem at all.
Becky, can you mute Robert?
I did, Madam Mayor. We're good to go now. You're welcome.
Sorry, Inspector, please go ahead.
No problem at all. That happens a lot with these virtual meetings. Not an issue whatsoever. So we did have the slide presentation, and if we could just move to slide number 2, improve roadway safety for everybody to see, that would be great. Thanks very much. So obviously one of the divisional goals that we have for North Division, and to be frank, this is always a divisional goal, is to improve roadway safety. Collisions are something that happen in North Division quite frequently, and unfortunately many times those collisions are fatal. And as police officers in North Division, we want to make sure that we're doing our best job to help lessen the statistics in regards to collisions up north. We are currently a part of Vision Zero. Vision Zero is a group that works together from the region, and we come up with safety by design, so on and so forth. I think Robert's off on mute there again. Oh, he's back on mute now. We're good. So we work with Vision Zero, and we come up with strategies by design, engineering, things like that to improve the safety of our intersections, so on and so forth. What we also want to do this year is use social media to inform all the citizens of North Division, especially Scugog, that we are out there, we are active, we are completing enforcement on a regular basis. And secondly, we want to track that information as well as we can, and we've been doing that. We have a new prone database, and this allows management of North Division to submit areas that require additional traffic enforcement. And once the officers attend their cruiser and they go out for their patrol, their sergeants can assign them specific areas, and then if they're out and they have proactive time to do patrol, they can look on their screens and come up with the hot spots in their area that require some enforcement. We can then track that enforcement through cautions, and in the instances where provincial offense notices are issued, we can track that as well. So we are being very proactive in that respect, and it's something that we hope to lessen the amount of collisions by the end of this year. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Community engagement. I'm just going to flip over my own slide here. We want to make sure that we're being proactive, and what that means is there's many times where our officers may not be dispatched to calls, and we want to make sure that they're out there doing the right things, engaging in foot patrols in the downtown areas of all of the municipalities of North Division. We want to make sure they're out interacting with the public as much as possible. This is something that our officers are being encouraged to do, and we're very hopeful that they are doing this and they are being more visible in all of our communities. In addition, we want to make sure that we provide updates to the councils, including Scugog Council, and we keep you apprised throughout the year. This talk that I'm having with everyone today was supposed to take place earlier in the year. However, when we do meet the next time, I hope to report on the progress that we are making on this specific plan. One of the definite things that we want to do, and we have been successful so far with respect to community engagement, is revitalizing or reinvigorating our snowmobile patrols, our ATV patrols, our bike patrols, and obviously I've already mentioned our foot patrols. We've just gone through some training. We've trained an additional 20 officers to ride our ATVs. So as we enter the spring here, we can get out and protect the trails and try to ensure that everybody is safe out there while they are enjoying the outdoors this summer. Our bicycle officers also were given a course, and we were able to provide training to our officers who will be out on the patrols on the bikes in all the communities this summer. And then once the winter comes, again, obviously our snowmobiles will be out there again. So those are the things that we plan to do in 2021 to be more visible and engage more proactively with our community. You can switch over to slide number 4, please. Thank you. This slide is basically a continuation of what we just discussed, and that's you know, getting out there with the community, showing the community that we are one and the same, listening to their needs and wants, and building those relationships. And that's something that we want to continue to do. In North Division, we're very blessed. We have Constable Christy Freck. Christy has been outstanding. She has been a liaison officer in the schools as well. She wears a number of hats, and she's done a great job at reaching out to the more vulnerable members of our community. And she has undertaken an initiative where we want to get out there and provide literature to some of the businesses where they can maybe recognize signs where our vulnerable members of our community, our elderly, our youth, that they are being protected. And that's one way that we're going to do that, is educating our business owners. Say, for example, here's the signs that someone entering your business may be the victim of a fraud. And we're going to hand these information pamphlets out and have our officers deliver them personally. And once again, that increases that interaction between our community, our business owners, our citizens, and our officers. And I think that's a great initiative. And we plan on doing that throughout the year, all throughout North Division. If we could switch to the next slide, please. This is an important slide. Obviously, with COVID, things are restricted, and that's just a reality that we all face every day. It's not just policing, it's every facet of society. When the restrictions are lifted, we do plan on taking a very active role with our youth, engaging with our students in the schools, providing educational talks. For example, human trafficking, we've been able to issue a talk that some of the students have already received, and that's been done virtually, and Christy's played a big role in that, along with our officers and our crew units. And we want to work together with our teachers and school officials and make sure that we are doing everything we can in the schools to support our students and to make sure that the schools are safe, reducing violence in the schools, And if there's any times where students may be at risk, completing that threat assessment so we can help solve some of those issues that some of our students face in our schooling system. We look forward to, obviously, like everyone else, to have the restrictions lifted so we can be more active and take care of those things that do affect our communities and our young people as well. If you could please switch over to slide number 6, please. Thank you. The Community Safety Advisory Council that is still operating, Tanya Brown from North Division, she oversees that committee, and Tanya's done a great job of bringing everyone together. I know currently she is looking for some additional members for her team, and they do a great job of identifying potential issues in the community and then coming up with solutions where everybody can work together, the police and the community as one, to solve some of the issues that we do face together. Also, we have Durham Connect North. Durham Connect North is a great initiative. We're going to have one officer on every one of our uniform platoons with specialized training where they can identify potential cases where a family or someone in the community may have an issue, and it brings together a lot of our social services as one, and we can collectively come up with a solution to solve some of the problems that some of our members face in the community. We can switch over to slide 7, please. Thank you. Currently, right now in North Division, there are a number of individuals who have been charged criminally with a variety of criminal offenses and have been released back into the community under various types of releases, whether it be a recognizance or an undertaking, or they're awaiting a future court date. Our officers are going to be very proactive in ensuring that those who are before the courts and who have been placed on court-imposed conditions, our officers are definitely going to follow up and make sure that those individuals are abiding by their conditions that were placed upon them. And in the instance that they are not abiding by those conditions, they will aggressively. Schedule 1 substances. These are your substances under the criminal code that are usually more dangerous in nature, substances such as cocaine, fentanyl, oxycodone, heroin, things of that nature. And Scugog is no different than any other community in the country, frankly, or in North America, that, you know, we do have issues with these types of substances. And more specifically, we have, sadly, we have, you know, children in a lot of cases, or young adults who are hooked on some of these very, very dangerous drugs. And make no mistake, these drugs do ruin lives and destroy families. There's no question about that. We are going to be very aggressive in North Division and trying to identify the traffickers of these substances, where they're coming from, and we plan on being extremely proactive and operationally speaking, enforcing the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and making sure that individuals who are trafficking these substances in our communities, we're going to be working very, very hard to identify them and take appropriate action at that time. So that's basically our, at a high level look at our strategic plan for 2021. Just some stats of interest. Our calls for service this year so far in comparison to last year have gone up slightly, up to 14%, with a 2% increase in reports submitted. We have issued a few more tickets this year, a 28% increase. Our officers, obviously, due to the the times that we find ourselves in with the pandemic, they are using discretion a lot of times, which I encourage. There are a lot of families that are facing difficulties right now, financially and otherwise, and our officers are sympathetic to that in many cases, and they do at times use their discretion, which I support. The compliance checks in general, there's an increase in that so far in 2021. So far in the township of Scugog, we've been able to run 9 ride programs, and that comes back to our community safety strategic plan goal, where we want to make sure that we're continuing to make people aware that impaired driving will not be tolerated. And the more times that we have ride programs on the road, word of mouth, social media, so on and so forth, word will get around, and hopefully that will prevent somebody who may have had a few too many drinks from making that terrible decision to get behind the wheel. And we're hopeful that the more visible we are and the more time we spend doing proactive enforcement, that we can hopefully reduce any types of collisions as a result of impaired driving. It's always going to be a goal of ours in North Division. In this past winter in Scugog, we had 11 snowmobile patrols. We stopped over 300 snow machines, and a lot of the times our officers were educating the riders on, the rules of the road, and many cautions were issued. Out of the 300 snowmobiles that were stopped, there were only 11 tickets issued at that time. So the feedback that we had from the community was outstanding. The people were happy to see our officers on the trails and making them safer for everyone to enjoy. That's all I have right now. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to do my best to answer them. If I'm unable to answer a question, I will get back to you as soon as I do have the answer. So once again, thank you very much for having me, and I'll open it up to questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Inspector. Whoops, I'm getting some feedback here. Thank you, Inspector. It was very informative. And I also want to thank you and everyone in North Division for responding so quickly to the number of cases that I've brought to your attention. Usually it's traffic, but I know, and sometimes the COVID issues. But I know that you've responded quickly, and I really do appreciate that. We all do. And I also, pardon?
Thank you. I just said thank you very much.
Okay. The other thing is we do appreciate, I know that you're very, very busy with everything that's going on, and then add COVID into the mix. But we do appreciate your help in engaging our residents and visitors who are not following the rules, and trying to educate them on the rules. I don't know whether you've had many cases of enforcement, but I know that all the police officers are trying to do it the easy way with engagement and education, and so we do very much appreciate that. I did have a request this morning from a constituent who was, and I'll leave this one with you, weekend motorcycle racing on Highway 57, the very east end of Scugog Township, around from View Lake apparently to Caesarea. So I will leave that one with you. And I have a couple of councillors with questions. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much, Inspector Ryan Connolly and Sergeant Mark and Sergeant Lux, for your presentation today and for everything that you shared with us. We're really grateful for the support of our OPP to help keep our Durham Regional Police, to keep our public safe. You mentioned in your report some specific ways that you'll be supporting Vision Zero to try to prevent collisions before they happen, like your tracking database, identifying hotspots, your ride programs, social media education. Unfortunately, last fall, a 15-year-old stole a car and went over 150 kilometers. Police employed a stop stick, but that ended in a collision. Are there any other particularly unique tools or strategies that you'll be using to help really work towards this Durham Vision Zero that we're trying to employ in Scugog with our speed limit reductions and what have you, that we've also contributed to try to help work together to make that happen in Scugog?
Right. So I've personally participated in a couple of the Vision Zero meetings. Constable Todd Grimmins is our divisional traffic safety coordinator, and he's a little bit more involved than what I am. I do know from a policing perspective, outside of the issues I've already discussed about, making sure that we're out there and we're visible and we're active and we are doing proactive enforcement. We will work with Vision Zero and maybe discuss where are the good places or the more prominent places where we can put some of the new video, the radar video that's up, where drivers can be issued tickets for speeding in certain areas, and we work together and try to come up with solutions like that. If there's a high risk or high collision area, we will then target our officers to those specific areas to try to have people slow down and abide by the conditions, because obviously high speeds are one of the major factors in the four killers: seat belts, speed, drinking and driving, things like that. We want to definitely minimize that, and the best way we can do that in North Division is to be as proactive as possible, be visible, be on the roads, and then target and identify those locations which are causing the most issues in an attempt to lower the speeds and make those locations safer.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned in your report about scams, York Regional Police 4 days ago charged 3 Brampton men of tricking an 80-year-old woman into sending thousands of her savings to Canada Revenue Agency scam. What can Scugog seniors do if they suspect a scam? Should they check with OPP? You mentioned about distributing fraud brochures. Will those be distributed through our seniors facilities, community groups? Unfortunately, it's hitting far too close to home, the amount of scams that we're seeing in our community of late.
Right. So Detective Constable Marty Franson, we're very lucky we have him. Marty doesn't work in North Division. He is assigned to our financial crimes unit. Marty is an expert, and he is extremely passionate about preventing seniors from being defrauded. And I'd be hard pressed to find a seniors home or assisted living facility in Durham Region that Marty has not attended in the last couple of years. And Marty attends and he does talks with all of our seniors. That being said, we can always do more. Last week, we created a pamphlet that we want to give to all the business owners. And the idea is we want to have each of the officers with businesses in their patrol zones to get out, take this literature into the business owners, have a conversation supported by the brochure as to what they can look for, and they can see the signs where maybe a senior citizen is about to be victimized or has been victimized. And I think if we can educate all of our business owners, that will go a long way into helping prevent these types of incidents from happening. They do happen still, unfortunately. One of my former assignments was being the detective sergeant in charge of the financial crimes unit. And I'm very well aware of how sad some of these cases are. And, you know, that's what these individuals do. They prey on the weak and the vulnerable. And we're definitely going to continue to try to educate our seniors as best we can, and the people that interact with our seniors, families, business owners, and everyone, so we can help recognize these signs sooner. But definitely if incidents do occur where someone has tried to victimize one of our senior members of our community, we definitely want to know about it, and we hope to receive a call about that for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, thanks to Inspector Connolly and the two staff sergeants who are joining him today. I'm just wondering about the youth and whether or not you're dealing more with youth these days because they have nothing to do. They try to congregate, and I don't know how that's going, or less. I live on a street where kids are driving up and down with dirt bikes with no license plates, and now we have people in golf carts driving around. So they're kids and they're just looking for something to do, which I understand, but I'm wondering whether or not you've noted an increase in your interactions with youth or a decrease with COVID.
In fairness, I don't have any concrete stats of the exact interactions or the amount of times that we have dealt with the children. What our approach has been, and we have received a number of calls with respect to COVID or the behavior that you're talking about, where, you know, kids are maybe, you know, doing things that they're up to mischief, basically, and they're doing things that they maybe shouldn't be doing. Our officers, you know, they do interact with the youth all the time in the park, so on and so forth. And, you know, for the most part, the majority of those interactions are all very positive. You know, our officers, you know, they've taken an education approach, you know. Hey guys, this is the law. This is what we have to do. This is why we have to do it. You know, could you help us out here and help respect that? And for the most part, the feedback has been excellent from the youth. As for an increase, you know, I think we all share the same concerns. I have 2 young children myself, and I know it's a challenge, especially lately with the current lockdown and restrictions. And you know, you're trying to keep these guys busy because they've got so much energy and they're at that stage in their life where they want to be interacting. And when they're not doing it, definitely there are some challenges, and it's a challenge that I think we're all trying to deal with together as best we can. I think, you know, we're all hopeful that hopefully we get some better news in the next few weeks or the next month as you know, we hopefully exit this lockdown and can ease some of the restrictions, which would take some of the pressure off our children and allow them to be kids again, right? And maybe not get into some of the trouble where they're playing sports and keeping active and so on and so forth. So we all share the same concerns. I apologize, I don't know of the exact statistic of increased or not, but that's the best I can answer the question at this time.
No, that answer is very suitable. Thank you very much for answering it. That's good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Inspector Connolly. taking the time to speak to us today. My first question is, and you touched upon some of it quite eloquently in terms of human trafficking and then in terms of fraud prevention. My question is, perhaps, is there a way that we can look at reaching out towards youth? I'm thinking in particular in terms of social media for internet safety and what to watch for, that, you're not exposing yourself to people that you don't know. I think that, I don't know if it's perhaps just because we're in the north and we kind of take it for granted that we're in a safe area, that we can put maybe more out there than we should. That's just my first question.
So I'm very passionate about both issues. Once again, and in my previous job, I also headed up the human trafficking unit. So there are a number of resources right now that the Durham Regional Police Human Trafficking Unit, in conjunction with the Victim Services, they're very active in educating our youth, especially grade 9. So in grade 9, every single student will receive a presentation from Victim Services in conjunction with our human trafficking unit. And during those talks, the children are educated on healthy relationships and what to look for, what to look for the signs of human trafficking, not only for the students, but also for their friends. So if they recognize that one of their friends are going through something, and it educates the teachers as well and the parents. So we want to make sure we get that message out. We have been relatively successful. I know for a fact in the last few years, and I'm not positive since COVID started, but traditionally every grade 9 student in Durham region receives this talk. In addition, there's some more resources. The Human Trafficking Unit came up with a website in conjunction with some of the community partners called www.stopht.com. And on that website, there's some excellent resources. And there's actually there was a skit on there before that kind of illustrates to the children how potentially human trafficking begins and how it's usually a relationship. And that's how it usually starts. And there's some great resources on there if you wanted to go and check it on. And I would invite you to share that website with anyone that you can, with respect to just educating them on this very important issue. Because once again, some of the stories from that unit are absolutely heartbreaking, as are the students, as are the incidents where our seniors are defrauded. So we need to continue to educate as many people as we can. And as community partners, if you could help us with that message and passing that along to the individuals and the citizens in your community, that would be very helpful.
Further through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Yes, I certainly will take the time to share those resources. And I'd like to thank again yourself for participating in Vision Zero. I participated in a couple of meetings as a member of Durham Region Cycling Coalition at the time. On the same kind of note, just we have a program, I believe, for Road Watch through Durham Region. Is that a functioning program? And if so, how can we report incidents from North Durham? I know I have a lot of residents in Ward 1 who walk their dogs or say they're getting their mail, and they're reporting to me that there's incidents where people are maybe perhaps passing them at too much speed or not giving them enough space. So is there somewhere that they can report those sorts of occurrences?
Yes, if one of the citizens in your community happens to report that to you, by all means contact us. Once again, I'll just go back to our prone hotspot. So if you were to call up and say, Inspector Connolly, we're having a real issue at this location, I've had so many complaints, I would say that's great, thanks very much. And then at that point, once I get the location and what the complaints are, I can then do my research as to what we have done to date at that location. And I can determine if there has been enough enforcement or not. And depending on the data that we receive back, then I can assign the officers to that specific location, and they can track their activities there, which we will have available to us in no time at all. So it has been helpful. I mean, sometimes we get complaints where citizens may feel that we are not doing enforcement at a specific location, and in fairness to the citizen, they're not at that location all the time, so they don't really know. And at least then we can report back and say, you know what, our officers have spent so many hours at this location, they've issued so many tickets and so many cautions. And now that we have that data, it's been beneficial because it helps you as well to respond to these citizens and just provide them that information. And once again, I wish we were in a situation where we could have an officer on pretty much every street. It's just not reality. However, when there are instances where we need to pay specific attention to a certain location, we will do so for sure. So please pass that information along, and then we can do our research and then put in place a plan of action.
Further through, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. So just, is there a way that they can perhaps automatically, say through Roadwatch, input that information? Like I know with Durham Region traffic, if a push button's out for a pedestrian cross signal, you can just log in and tag it and then input the information. Is there a way for them to automatically input that into Roadwatch? Or do they need to call them?
I may be mistaken. It's happened many times before. But I believe that the road watch information comes into our regional traffic unit, and it doesn't necessarily come straight to North Division. It will then be disseminated to North Division at some point. But we do have the North Division email handle here. So specifically, if you have an issue in relation to Scugog, there's no issue whatsoever with you sending me an email or North Division, and at that point we will act accordingly.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. And Councillor Ross, as a former police officer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, thank you, Inspector, for the presentation. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Just a quick question in regards to the cannabis operations throughout the township, in particular those that are operating illegally. Is there anything that you can share with us today about further plans in regards to monitoring enforcement of these operations?
Yes, I can. We have undertaken already. It's already started. We're going to be looking at every single marijuana growing operation in North Division. This initiative will be led by our drug enforcement unit. This initiative is run annually. It's dubbed Project Mosquito, and we've been meeting since the fall and coming up with our plan and strategizing about how we're going to deal with all of these issues. We have had some previous meetings with our partners in the councils among North Division to try to come up with and strengthen certain bylaws in certain situations. But that issue is one that we are very alive to. We are aware that it is causing a lot of issues all across North Division, and we're going to be very aggressive. And it's already started where we're going to be looking at these marijuana growing operations to ensure, number one, that if they are licensed, that they are abiding by their license restrictions. And in the event that we're not, and we do have enough grounds to obtain a search warrant, we will do so each and every case. And we do have a team that's working on this right now.
That's great. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That's it for questions. Just thank you to you and to all of your officers for what you do. I know too well what it is, but with all the negative press, sometimes it's in the air. I can assure you that at least this township, the residents are very pro-blue, pro-police. So it's nice to be up here. But thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. And I do not have any further questions on the chat box. And so I'd like to thank you and your officers very much again for your presentation today and answering our questions and for all the work you do on a day-to-day basis. We really do appreciate our officers in the North. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I will make sure to pass that message along to all the officers in North Division. Thank you very much for having me, and have a great meeting. And I look forward to speaking with you in the near future.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Take care.
We'll move on now to transportation planning analysis. Aliyah Tula from the region.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Can we just get a resolution to receive the presentation?
We need a motion to receive. Councillor Watt and Councillor McDougall. Will you call the vote, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Madam Clerk, my system doesn't seem to be working right now. If you could vote in favor for me, please.
It's Councillor Guido Singles for me in favor. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councillor McDougall, it is showing up, but it doesn't seem to be accepting my vote. Can I vote in favor, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems to be a technical glitch here. I can see everyone voting, but it's not allowing me to close the vote, Madam Mayor. So just for your information, everybody has voted in favor. I apologize. I don't know what the technical difficulty is here, but Madam Mayor, everyone has voted in favor.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on now to Aliyah Tulloch. She's the Transportation Planning Analysis with the Region of Durham. And please go ahead with your presentation.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you some background information and an update on the region's Active and Sustainable School Travel Program, or the ASST program for short. I've tried to keep things as short as possible, so there'll be lots of time for questions at the end. Next slide, please. All right, so the ASST program is the region's transportation demand management program for schools. And the goals of the program are to increase the number of children regularly using active and sustainable modes of transportation, including walking, cycling, scootering, and taking the school bus, as well as to decrease traffic congestion around schools and identify other opportunities to improve pedestrian and cyclist safety at schools and along routes to schools. In recent years, township staff have supported the program activities that have taken place in Scugog, and Section 4.8.1 of the township's proposed active transportation and transportation master plan contains a recommendation for the township to participate in the region's ASST program. Next slide, please. All right, I'm just going to do a little bit of a recap here about what we have done in the recent past. So in the 2019-2020 school year, the ASST program conducted school travel planning for 8 schools across Durham region. So school travel planning is a holistic and community-based approach that works by identifying and systematically addressing barriers to and incentives for active school travel. And this work was supported by schools, school boards, area municipalities, student transportation service providers, the Ontario Active School Travel Program, and by the region's Active and Sustainable School Travel Committee. Next slide, please. So we're a quick recap of the schools that participated. We had St. Elizabeth Student Catholic School, St. Isaac Jogues Catholic School, and Valley Farm Public School in Pickering, Uxbridge Public School in Uxbridge, Beaverton Public School in Brock, R.H. Cornish Public School in Scugog, and Charles Bowman Public School and St. Elizabeth Catholic Elementary School in Clarington. Municipal and school board representatives put forward suggestions, and the schools were selected based on an evaluation of the number of students living in the walk zone, available staff support, and the presence of school sustainability or environmental teams, as well as infrastructure near the school and neighborhood walk scores. All right, so there are 6 steps in the school travel planning process. The first 3, which are the most intensive, typically take place over the course of 12 months, and these involve selecting schools, identifying key stakeholders, collecting and analyzing data, and then developing the school travel plan. And then the final 3 are ongoing and iterative, and consist of implementing actions, evaluating progress and impact, adjusting and updating the plan as needed as stakeholders work toward achieving schools' active and sustainable school travel goals. Next slide, please. So the 4 data collection activities for the project took place in November and December of 2019. And these included hands-up student travel surveys, family surveys, neighborhood walkabouts, and traffic observations. And the data collection activities were supported by school staff, regional and area municipal staff, ASST committee members, and students themselves. Next slide, please. All right, and through the family survey, caregivers shared what influences their children's school travel mode and what could be changed in order for them to consider active transportation. And responses indicated the need for more or better infrastructure in and around schools, and education to help build the skills and confidence that children need to walk, scoot, and cycle safely. Next slide, please. So this was interesting. The key finding from the student travel survey is that almost 1,900 students of the 4,000 that responded, so it represents 50% of students across all the 8 schools, are using active and, 50% of those that could be using active and sustainable travel modes are currently being driven to school. It also found that only a very small number of students, around 3%, are using a bike or scooter for school travel. Next slide, please. Areas around schools where the visibility, safety, and or comfort of active transportation users could be improved were identified through the neighborhood walkabout and traffic observation studies. And these studies also identified areas where more winter maintenance is needed and where schools are in need of additional on-site infrastructure, such as bike racks, and places where enforcement and education activities could help improve driver behavior. Next slide, please. Okay, the next step in the process was to produce school travel plans for each school. The school travel plans include an action plan that identifies how the school community will address barriers and opportunities for increasing active and sustainable school travel. Next slide, please. And the action plans use the 5 E's framework, which addresses education, encouragement, infrastructure, enforcement, and evaluation activities to ensure that the plans are comprehensive and include all relevant stakeholders. Next slide, please. To support the implementation of education and encouragement actions, regional staff have created resources such as Routes to School Planners. Routes to School Planners, you can see one on the right-hand side here, help parents understand where they are in relation to the school and how long it would take to walk or cycle from where they are, as well as to get a sense of where pedestrian supportive infrastructure and cycling supportive infrastructure too, is located around the school to help them make informed choices about how their children get to school. Other resources that are under development include pick-up drop-off maps, and the goal of these will be to help reduce congestion by educating parents about how to use school parking facilities. Next slide. All right, so the creation of school travel plans wrapped up sort of toward the fall of last year, and since then, our regional and area municipal public works staff have made a lot of progress on the engineering actions, which address challenges in the built environment around the schools. And so some of these activities have included adding letter markings to crossings through Durham Vision Zero to make them more visible, replacing sidewalks in school zones, and assessing locations for additional facilities such as pedestrian crossovers and mid-block crossings. So on the right-hand side here are some pictures showing some changes that have been made as a result of the project. So at the top here, we have the area around Charles Bowman Public School, and this shows a sidewalk extension up Bonds Avenue and Liberty Street North. In the Google Map image on the left-hand side, you can see there's a little bit of a desire path there leading toward the intersection, and that was reported to get quite muddy in the spring and the fall, so that has now been paved. And then the bottom set of images show the trails in Argent Park, which is right beside St. Elizabeth Catholic Elementary School, and those trails have now been paved. Next slide, please. Oh, hold on one second. I'd also like to acknowledge that some great work has been done around RH Cornish Public School. So last year, there were significant sidewalk replacements completed, and I know that more sidewalk replacements are planned throughout Scugog around the schools, and there's a new community safety zone around RH Cornish. Next slide, please. Okay, so as for next steps, the ASST program will continue to support, encourage, and monitor the implementation of the action plans for the 8 schools that were part of the 2019-2020 project. But this year, we also hope to start working with 4 to 6 new schools from anywhere across the region. And that work will hopefully start in the fall. Although the ongoing situation with COVID-19 is a huge strain on school and school board resources, and I think we'll need to continue to tinker with our approach this year to find something that will work for all participants. And then lastly, the region is working on ASST program resources and campaigns that are intended to benefit the community in general. And these include promoting the Durham Region Youth Cycling Guide, and organizing a region-wide event for International Walk to School Month in October. Next slide, please. All right, so that brings me to the end. I'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Aaliyah. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And I do have a couple of questions. Councillor McDougall, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through Madam Mayor. I do have a question, and just in terms of Durham Student Transportation Services, I think that's the busing provider. Do you have an active relationship with them in terms of, reducing congestion around the schools? I know in Port Perry in general, I think DSTS has moved towards what I believe they call consolidated busing where students will get on one bus and then they'll say go to S.A. Cocker, then to Port Perry High School, and then to R.H. Cornish. There's already a significant amount of congestion around these schools with regards to parents dropping off students in their cars, and then you add a stream of many, many buses that will follow each other from school to school to school. And a follow-up question to that is perhaps in terms of considering active transportation, I know that DSTS will not allow a student to exit the bus, say at the high school, but will instead ask them to stay on the bus for an additional 10 or 15 minutes to wait in a queue to get off at RH Cornish, which is merely a couple-minute walk away. Is there a possibility that could be changed in the future, through Madam Mayor?
Leah, I'm not sure you can answer that or whether that's a DSTS question, but you've got the floor.
All right, well, I can take a stab. So we do have a relationship with DSTS. They were quite involved. So they sit on the Active and Sustainable School Travel Committee. They have been quite diligent in responding to the issues that were raised during the 2019-2020 project. There were a lot of so I joined Durham Region last year partway through this project. So I wasn't there for some of the initial data collection and discussions around travel challenges. I know that there were a number of issues that parents raised that they would like to see changed to make busing more comfortable and convenient for their children. And so from what I understand, I mean, you have to balance the safety of students and the predictability of where they get dropped off against that. And I don't know if there were any easy answers, but we do plan to continue to work with them. It was really interesting to hear the issues that you raised. Some of those were a little bit different from some of the ones that I heard earlier in the project. So I will keep those in mind the next time I have an opportunity to meet with them just to discuss. And if we do happen to work with more schools in Scugog this year or in following years, we will be asking parents and students to share with us information about what challenges they have using active transportation and the school bus. So hopefully as we all work together, we'll come up with some answers.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor McDougall?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to really thank everybody for taking part in this project in Scugog Township. Myself, I carried forward a motion to hopefully get a crosswalk eventually in Greenbank, which will allow the students on the west side of the the west side of Greenbank to travel to the school right in their own village of Greenbank eventually, again, if that's possible. So thank you very much for the presentation and supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Kiesebrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Tulloch, for your report to us today. Congratulations on the 704 responses. It's wonderful to have a way for families to talk about their concerns. And thank you also for the photos that showed the before and after of some of the solutions that have already been implemented. Those are very exciting and make kids' and parents' lives much safer. So thank you for that. With respect to just a couple of questions in the responses, there was a really simple and practical ask for secure bicycle storage. Have the schools that make up this report, have they implemented a change in that regard?
Thank you for that question. So it has been a little bit challenging working directly with the schools during this time. There aren't a lot of, there's not a lot of free time to deal with a lot of the activities and actions that were incorporated into the action plan, including adding additional bike racks. But it is in the action plans, and I have checked in twice now with the school boards just to make sure that things are still moving along. So hopefully once the schools are ready to dive into their action plans and begin implementing, they'll make those requests to the school boards for the extra infrastructure.
Excellent. And further through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for noting that under engineering action that's on page 13 of your report that Scugog does have significant sidewalk replacements. We're definitely working on that with our active transportation plan. And specifically with the community safety zone around RH Cornish, how do you think that Scugog's new community safety zone will help facilitate the work of your active and sustainable school travel program?
So one of the key issues raised by parents was a perception that it wasn't safe for their children to walk. And so that was expressed in a few different ways. So one of them is just in the sense that congestion around the school is a problem or the infrastructure is insufficient, but also concerns that their children are not old enough, which can in many cases be just a different way of expressing I don't feel like my child has the skills or the experience to walk safely in this environment. So I think one of the really great things about the community safety zones, in addition to enforcing slower and safer speeds in school zones, is that it sort of signifies that safety is a concern in the municipality, and hopefully is a really great sign to parents that people who are driving through the school zone will be taking more care, and if they choose to let their child walk or cycle, that they will be safer as a result.
Okay, excellent. From parents in my ward, there are quite a few parents. I noticed that you have 43% of the 1,453 students who should be busing to school, which would reduce some of the congestion. 43% are driving and not using buses. Just to give you a little feedback I've got quite a number of parents in my ward who simply refuse to board buses because they do have unsafe common stops on main roadways. So a lot of dead end road kids who are on private cottage roads are from my communication with DSTS, they're advising that there's 178 dead end roads in Durham region where they're no longer accessing those roads. So do you think that this could in part inform some of that 43% of students that are not using buses?
Absolutely. Again, I missed a large part of the earlier stage of this particular project, and I'm fairly new to the program, but I do know, just looking back through the documentation, that the location of stops, the safety of stops, that was an issue that was raised by parents. And so DSTS has been made aware through the project of some problem areas. It is unclear right now what can change. Hopefully, though, as we continue to work together and prioritize active and sustainable school travel, and there may be an opportunity to address some of these, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good answers for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you, and to Ms. Tulloch, thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned that more people are driving their kids to school than anything else. What's the goal here? Is it to get kids on buses? Is it to get them to walk more and bike more? Or is it just a matter of fact that most parents would choose to drive their children to schools in this area?
So that's a very interesting question. A large number of students do live within the walk and bus zones for each one of the 8 schools that we work for. I know that we're involved in this project. I know that different schools across the region have different ratios. So some schools are more bus schools and some schools are more walk zone schools, more students in the catchment area within a walking distance of the school. This program is really set up to work best for schools that have a large number of students who could be walking, cycling, or using scooters to get to school. While it does address busing, I think it's a more attractive package for schools, and there's definitely more opportunity when there are more students in the walk zone.
No, please go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no worries. Hopefully I'm not waffling too much. But I was just going to say that, there are lots of benefits to getting kids using active modes of transportation to get to school. So research has shown that there are mental health benefits. Walking to school helps reduce stress for both adults and children. When kids are active before school, they're often able to focus better in the classroom. Other benefits just include general health benefits. So physical activity, something that we all need. It's becoming increasingly difficult for people of all ages to meet the recommended quota of physical activity in a day. Getting kids to walk to school helps reduce car congestion in and around the school area. And so some benefits of that include, it is safer for children to walk in the school zone when there are fewer cars and less congestion. And then there is less air pollution in the area around schools. So there are lots of different benefits for parents and children and for the community at large to encourage higher rates of active transportation. So that's really the focus of the project and the program and what we're hoping to achieve through this.
Great. Thank you very much.
in respect to the ladder painting, specifically in the township of Scugog. We have it on on Queen and Simcoe Street. I myself have received many compliments regarding the ladder painting that has been added to that intersection as far as an added safety measure for this crossing. Will this be part of the regular maintenance so that when the lines start to fade away, that the ladder painting will continuously be upgraded?
I'm really glad to hear that that was so well received. That's some great feedback. So I know that there was some additional funding unlocked through Durham Vision Zero for ladder markings. You know, the condition of crosswalks, the ladder markings, the visibility of them really does impact pedestrian safety. So while I don't know if there is an intention to continue the funding through Durham Vision Zero, I would hope that when ladder markings become dilapidated, that there would continue to be interest in having them repainted.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. And Aaliyah, I'd just like to say, for somebody who just came on board recently, you sure have done a great job of this presentation and answering questions. And many of us on council and staff, you know, walk 10 miles uphill both ways in 10 feet of snow to our schools, and you know, we're better people for it. So hopefully that'll catch on, because I truly do believe that kids function better at school, and if they do get some exercise before and after school and during recess. So anyway, thank you very much for your presentation, and I'll look for a motion to receive, please. Motion to receive, please. Councillor Guido and Councillor Brown. Will you call the vote, please, or would you like me to, Madam Clerk, would you like me to just ask if there are any opposed?
Voting is open. I think we're good now with the technical difficulties. Sorry about that, Madam Mayor.
That's okay.
Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Kiesebrink. I can't click on the voting, so I'm voting yes. Thank you.
Councillor Guido?
Same for I was just coming off mute. Same for me, Madam Clerk. I was hoping it was just delayed in coming up, but it has not come up yet.
Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Councillor Watton? In favor. Councillor McDougall?
In favor.
Perfect. Voting is closed.
And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Once again, thank you, Aaliyah, for your presentation today. We'll move on now to 9.3, and I'll call on Nick Swerdviger, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Robert Lockhart from Barry Bryan Associates and the Rethink Group to talk about the Blackstock Recreation Complex preliminary design. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My name is Nick Swerdviger, Principal Architect at Barry Bryan Associates. I'm joined today with Robert Lockhart, who is Principal at Rethink Group. In 2019, I'm going to say late summer, before the world was turned on its edge, as so much of it still seems, Barry Bryan and Rethink Group were engaged through the town of Scugog in a study for a new arena and community center in Blackstock, based on the previous master recreation plan that was carried out through a development charge study, as we understand. The opportunity through federal and provincial government with the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, which had a deadline of November 2018, provided funding for publicly accessible multi-purpose community spaces that promote a variety of different services, programs, social and cultural activities that respond to community needs. So through a series of public consultation, workshops, design meetings, BBA and the Rethink Group associated sub-consultant teams were able to assist the Township of Scugog and the associate stakeholder groups to provide a detailed comprehensive submission for the ICIP grant, which was submitted in November 2019, and the following highlights for the submission for the Blackstock Community Recreation Complex. Next slide, please. So just as an introduction, Barry Bryan and Associates and Rethink Group engaged with the Township of Scugog to provide preliminary design and concept planning for this assignment. Robert Lockhart will now discuss some of the needs assessment and public consultation phase of the project. Next slide, please. And next slide, please.
All right, it's Robert Lockhart here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we're good. All right. So the first two slides I'm going to speak to relate to the needs assessment, and we looked at all available information from the master plan to reports to council to the analysis of the indoor pool options, site planning analysis, the township strategic plan, and also conducted our own research and public consultation for the project. And ended up with a set of conclusions that basically said that a new facility in Blackstock would be very appealing to all residents of the township, and especially those who lived within a reasonable distance from it. There was strong demand in community support expressed both through the master plan and the work that we did. There's anticipated population growth particularly within Port Perry, but also some other parts of the township that would increase demand for all culture and recreation services right across really all spectrums. Many of the new residents are expected to be young families, which will tend to maybe make your age profile a little bit younger, and certainly the kinds of things that are being recommended for the Blackstock Community Center would be very appealing to this demographic. And additionally, the new facility would replace a legacy arena that's been in the community for 80 years and well past its best before date. Next slide, please. The other things that are very important is that this particular concept of proposing certain facilities for Blackstock fits perfectly within the philosophy of having two community recreation hubs, one in Port Perry and one in Blackstock. It also supports the principle that for some kinds of facilities that you might only need one of in your community, that they wouldn't be duplicated from in both places, but would in fact it would be there would be one of each provided, and your residents would travel from one center to the other depending on what they wanted to participate in. But there are going to be a few facilities like indoor ice pads and multi-purpose programmable space that you could in fact duplicate in both centers of activity. And finally, the new facility will certainly improve the quality of life of the residents who live in the Blackstock community, and very importantly, provide some substantial economic stimulus to the Blackstock community, just because of the very presence of the facility and the kinds of activities it will draw and the business it will draw and the number of people it will draw into the community. So that's the essence of it. There's a lot more in the document, but that hits the high points, and I'm going to pass it back to Nick.
Nick, are you're still on mute?
Sorry, I apologize. It's an amateur mistake. I was just highlighting that some of the design considerations that were brought through were done through a community public consultation and integrated design workshop process with some of the communities and the stakeholders, some of which to mention are the Blackstock Agricultural Society, the Blackstock Advisory Committee, the Scugog Accessibility Community, as well as additional community members within Blackstock and surrounding areas. town staff, and as well as the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations. With the process, the design considerations that were brought forth were obviously community needs, the site constraints. That's the second slide of our presentation showed. It is an existing site. We have an existing armory facility that is currently the banquet hall now, the current arena as it stands. And what are those constraints, but also look towards opportunities as well, and the growth around the arena and the community that is formed around it. Functional and organizational and planning around that. Social interactivity, which is a large one. And finally, something that, a lot of people hear about is sustainable design. And that's really just something that makes design go a lot further. So aspects such as net zero carbon design, mass timber components, site efficiency, and energy conservation. Next slide, please. So through some preliminary design, as I talked about in the site opportunities, just giving some highlights here on where we got to, as you'll see in the future slides to come. But the existing community hall, a multi-purpose component, which was heavily encouraged from the previous infrastructure grant, because it was all about providing multi-use spaces and more inclusivity within communities. The gymnasium space, which also dovetails off that multi-purpose. Gymnasium can be used for many things. That was one of the larger voted for components within the community analysis. And then we have obviously potentials of a civic square as the new arena comes in and the old arena could possibly be demolished along the street. The major component of the new arena and then associated parking areas. We also have many people are probably asking what an SWM area is. It's a stormwater management retention area, but it's also going to be coupled with a park and trail area. That's for the stormwater management of the site as we redevelop the large parking area demands. Next slide, please. So these are some of the early images that we came up with in terms of there was many variations of how to organize on the site. Organizing in a north to south bar with east and west elongated orientation on the site had reached a larger conclusion due to its sustainability aspect, but also its ability to plan around existing and future uses and accommodate possibly the agricultural society. That was one of the larger points coming forward and sort of taking away but still keeping a place for them, as that's been a strong historical root within Blackstock. Next slide, please. So this was the conceptual site plan that we came up with. A lot of people will probably say, why so much asphalt or parking? That is the current demand for what a facility like this could generate. So some of the highlighted design elements of this project were a new 200 to 300 NHL size single pad arena with all the associated dressing rooms, refrigeration, and ice making areas. The 8,000 square foot double gymnasium, which you'll see up in this area here next to the hall. The 2,500 square feet of multi-purpose spaces. Again, as I was speaking about, the grant was really generated towards multi-use spaces and interactivity. Indoor walking and running track. The retention of the current fairgrounds. So a large part of this was we were taking away fairgrounds. So where could the fairgrounds be located on the site? And that's to the left of the page. The retained current hall, which is the existing armory, which is located at the top along Church Street. And then future outdoor amenity areas in Civic Square. And finally, new site services, because obviously developing a building like this calls for a renewal of the infrastructure. So all the things like stormwater management and septic and so forth. Next slide, please. So here's a detailed view of the floor plan, basically just tilted on its side. So again, you can see the existing hall in gray, the multi-purpose spaces that are colored in orange where the main connection is, and one of the entrances off Church Street. The gymnasium and walking track and the associated program elements as change rooms, all in yellow. The arena spaces are located in blue, with the arena in the central area. To the left of the page is where all the ice making, refrigeration will be located, and then to the top of the page is the series of dressing rooms that enter directly onto the ice surface. And the main entrance, which is the green area almost in the middle, yep, right there. It's a little different when you're not controlling it, which is sort of a circulation spine in itself, and then the ability to go left or right into the colder areas or into the multi-purpose areas. Next slide, please. So this is an image that's taken from the northwest, a little above just below a bird's eye view, looking at sort of how that main entrance would play off the main parking lot. The tilting roofs would be integrated with photovoltaic, as sustainability was one of our key factors in incorporating not just energy conservation but energy generation in this project model. Sources of natural daylight as well are very important in facilities like this. Next slide, please. And so you have an interior view of what it's like to be in that main central spine coming out of the main entrance, which is in the background. You have the viewing area into the hockey arena to the left. You might notice there's a lot of incorporation of wood, as we looked at mass timber as being the main structural element, carrying a large sustainability and low carbon footprint for the building itself. Next slide, please. So one of the stronger elements, and this may play into the future grants that are coming down the road, is the idea of sustainable design. The current mandate of having net zero carbon project goals by 2050 through our federal government as well. And that only entails embodied energy, so low carbon embodied energy through materials. So things like wood have a lower carbon embodied energy, which is adversely combated by something like steel, which has a high carbon energy embodiment. Mass timber design, which I talked about. You start from the start really with site design and efficiency and conservation, using less land, or efficiently planning your building on that land so that the site can be maximized. And then the overall energy conservation in terms of operating and how all these little things play a part together. There's really no one piece that can really make it work. It has to work together to form its real traditional and operating output. Next slide, please. So here's an image through the gymnasium that was prepared, just showing the walking and running track at the above level, and then the gymnasium and below. Next slide. And then, of course, the large component of the project, which was also submitted within the grant, which was the cost estimate at this time. This was done in November 2019, so obviously numbers have changed since then. We haven't done an update, sort of something that got stalled at the start of COVID, and we're starting to look at this possibly again. And next slide, please. And then Robert, I'll let you jump in here.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the second task that I was involved in, working very closely with municipal staff, is to put together a financial projection around operating costs. And the first thing we did was look at all of the different components of the facility and list the kinds of uses and programs that could take place there, because that helps you then understand what kind of revenue you could generate and how the facility could be used in total. We then went ahead and projected to the year 2027 as sort of a best guess at what the third year of facility operation might be, not knowing exactly when it was going to open, but we had to pick a date. So 2027 was the date we picked, and it represents what we call a mature state of facility use and operation, hoping that by the third year of operation, you've pretty well maximized your revenue generation, the use of the facility, and you've got your operational side humming smoothly, so that the costs of operation are going to be at their minimum. So it turns out to be a year that after that you project forward based on inflation. We then built in all the assumptions we could think of that related to revenue and expenses, which then shows you how we determine each of those. And if any of those change over time, you go back and then rerun the numbers. But you have to start somewhere. So we came up with the most realistic assumptions. On the revenue side, we always estimated low, and you're going to be pleasantly surprised if you end up with more revenue, which sometimes happens. We also recognize that the new building will be 3.5 times larger than what's there, will be much more energy efficient, will incorporate natural and greener building materials, and also the energy source will become electricity instead of a mixture of natural gas and electricity. And we're hoping that some electricity will be generated on site, as Nick has mentioned, with the solar panels. So that's sort of the general overview of how we arrived at the financial projections. And if we go to the next slide. So sort of a quick summary of all the detail that's in there. Revenue is projected to grow by about 380%. It might even be higher than that. Expenses are anticipated to increase by about 260%. Most of that reflected are influenced by the larger building. So if you compared the projected new building to the current Blackstock Recreation Complex, you can see that revenue is many times higher, from 130 to roughly 330 or 630. Expenses from about 265 to about 950. The recoveries from 133 to 321, with a net overall increase of about 188,000, and that could be lower if the revenue side increases. We're expecting the expenses are going to stay relatively close to those numbers, but the revenue could increase. So your net annual investment in the facility could be under 188, depending on how it all rolls out. So that covers my discussion about financial projections. Nick, back to you.
Thank you, Robert. So just in closing, this is just another one of the images taken looking at the main entrance, incorporating some of the materials off the old traditional armory with the brick wall signifying that entrance to tie things together. Next slide. And that just concludes our presentation. Just wanted to note some quick updates that there is currently a new federal grant that was recently released that we were brought aware of, that possibly capital planning is looking at. And it's under the Green and Inclusive Community Building Program. It's got a deadline of apparently of July 6, 2021. And we hope to be a part of it with the Township of Scugog and their recreation programming. I know it's a difficult time to talk about other ways of spending money, as we've been evidently spending them on things that are in very need right now. But it's always nice to look to the future and to be a little more optimistic. And thank you very much. And we can try to take any questions as they become available.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It's pretty exciting. I'm going to ask for a motion to receive the presentation, and then with council's blessing, I will bring forward the report and we can ask questions of the report. So a motion to receive is Councillor Watton and Councillor Brown. Could we call the question, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll vote in favor, Madam Clerk. Councillor Watton.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall?
In favor.
Thank you. Voting is closed.
And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll bring forward the report, report number 10.1.9, and I'll ask our CAO to introduce this. Mr. Nix.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you are aware, Director Coleman was the key staff lead, or is the key staff lead on this project, and unfortunately she was unable to attend today. So if we have any, we'll do our best to answer the questions, but if there are any questions we cannot answer, we'll take them back and get them answered when Director Coleman is available. This is really the accumulation of a direction that was provided by Council a couple years ago, and unfortunately COVID got in the way of completing it early last year when it was anticipated. So this is bringing forward the designs, the results of the community input that had been received at that point. It is the costs there are high-level cost estimates that are put forward, and it's like any development or any building, as the use and the scope of the building gets defined and the drawings get better produced, that the certainty of the costs get better. So these are developed and provide a magnitude of the costs that were anticipated. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I do think that as with everything that's done, the costs will have to be reevaluated in today's environment and understanding what types of assumptions are realistic in a post-COVID environment. But that's something that will need to be done as we move forward. Staff are looking at the grant program that has been mentioned, and we'll be coming back to Council with options related to that grant program in time for the deadline for submission. So with that, I'll just leave it and pass it over to Shauna Cornish, who helped Carol or Director Coleman with this project, and the consultants will be able to help answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO, and I will turn it over to Ms. Cornish. Are there any questions for Ms. Cornish? And if she is not able to answer them, she could turn it over to Nick or Robert. So I'll call on Councillor Watton first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to the delegates, thank you, or the presenters, thank you for the design in that. It looks, from my perspective, a very exciting and well tied in project to Nick, to your credit for what you already did at the armories. It looks like it would tie in very nicely. I do have a question respecting that, the costs are, I will say, unknown. I know you did your best on to arrive at the ones we have at this point, but we also know that the costs of everything have approached, if it had to be. And what would the implications be?
I would say that Nick or Robert could answer that question.
I'll use my hand up to answer. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Watton. With a lot of projects, yes, there is obviously, especially larger projects, a phased approach. It's just a matter of really designing and going back to the table with parts of council, and I would say maybe even parts of the involved stakeholders at that time, to really look at what parts or components of that project deserve to be put forward and which ones can be deferred to later dates. And keep in mind too that always to be noted, and talking about cost in today's world, I wish I had a crystal ball, because I have some projects right now that have changed costs in the last 3 to 4 months dramatically. But with that in mind, and looking at a phased approach, that you will always, a phased building will always cost more in the end than a full building. Now, if that's understood, the other part of that is that, the capital at the start is always less. But in working with a phased project, there always needs to be that sort of insight to look forward and say that, you have to put the infrastructure in. Certain things in the first phase will always cost more than building the whole thing out at once, if that helps to answer your question. But yes, any project usually can be phased in this sort of manner.
Thank you. And yes, it does answer my question. And if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, just one further question. You, and this is to Nick as well, you commented on all the asphalt for the parking. In today's world where climate change is at the forefront and greenhouse gases and so on and so forth, are there ways of doing parking lots that would not necessarily be so much asphalt?
Thank you, Councillor Watton, and through Madam Mayor. Yes, I mean, definitely there is. There's larger techniques, permeable paving, for instance, even things like granular. So, large crusher run, not in the immediate areas, but say in the overflow areas. Those are all contributing factors to helping reduce stormwater management. And I'm glad you brought it up with the reduction in greenhouse gases and how we look to provide facilities or build facilities that are more carbon neutral projects. In today's world, there's a myriad of options available, I would say, that would replace the traditional asphalt parking lot, so to speak. That they too come at a cost, and there's a maintenance aspect to them as well. But again, that's the purpose of having a design team and a design process, is to review those options and bring them forward to provide education and the options available, so that you can look at them all and make the best decisions for the project.
Further,
thank you. No, thank you, and that's it for my questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, and thanks to the presenters as well from me. These questions, I think, are probably for Ms. Cornish or Mr. CAO. I could be wrong, but I'll ask what I ask anyway. Page 3 of 11 of the report, the estimate capital cost to maintain the arena in its current state, $4.65 million. So I'm wondering, how much are we losing per year then?
Through Madam Mayor to the Councillor Brown, Shauna, and I can try to answer this one. So our capital costs are slightly different than our operating. So the capital costs, we haven't invested in the facility in the last couple of years capital wise, but operationally in our non-COVID year, our estimated budget for 2021, which is slightly different than some of the numbers that were presented today, is a net facility operating loss of $126,300. That's our expenses are budgeted at $255,900 and our revenue projected for $129,900, which hasn't occurred, of course, due to COVID. So the year-to-date expenses during the pandemic for Blackstock is our expenses are to date $24,300, which is mostly utilities to just keep the building operating, with a revenue of $1,200, and that's from our Blackstock Nursery School that has used our facility. So that's a net facility operating loss of $23,100 to date in the pandemic. Thank you.
But there's $126,300 net facility operating loss for 2021, right? That's what you said.
That in a non-COVID year, that's what we would budget for, yes.
Okay, well, it's sitting there doing nothing now, principally, I imagine, so it would be pretty much the same, even in a COVID year, right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I think in a non-COVID year, we would just have definitely more revenue. So our expenses would be more with payroll and the utilities, but our revenue generating is much larger. So, right, I would say in the non-COVID year, we would expect more revenue generation for sure.
Okay. On page 8 of 11, potential new sources of revenue for advertising and naming rights. So do I understand that we could have the arena, and maybe likely will, named after a business like the Scotiabank Center, something like that? And the rights, I understand, if in fact that's the case, or they'd pay $25,000 or upwards of that for naming rights. And if that's true, how does one go about it? So I'll ask you first, do we get naming rights on this for Tim Hortons or McDonald's or whatever it might be? That's the first part of that question I should ask.
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Brown. Yes, that's something we're definitely wanting to pursue. It's a trend right now in recreational facilities. It could be a business, it could be partners, it could be an agricultural family out in the township that might want to provide those naming rights to the facility. So yes, we would pursue that.
Okay, and my final question, page 20 of 40 of the Rethink Report Needs Assessment says, investigate cost sharing opportunities for a pool with potential partners, including the YMCA. This is something we back and forth about before. Have we done any investigating in that at all, a pool and maybe a partnership with the YMCA?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I believe a couple of years ago there were preliminary talks with Stockworth. They occurred, but decided not to proceed due to issues with the condominium development. The staff have decided to pursue the SCRC as a possible site. But since then, no further cost sharing opportunities have been explored to date.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Just since you brought up a pool, I would be remiss if I didn't say that in the master plan, although the Blackstock Arena complex is the number one need, it was identified in the master plan that the number one want in the township was a pool, an indoor pool. Having said that, I recognize, and all staff recognizes, that the number one need is the Blackstock Recreation Complex. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the clarification that this is the number one need in Scugog. I, for myself, was mistaken thinking it was our roads needs. I'd just like to ask, I'm not sure exactly who to ask this question to, but I was looking through the report and I was trying to find the cost of ice rental prior to 2021. I see a financial study done with per hour rates for 2021, but I'm not sure what the ice rental rates were previously. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Cornish?
Yep, through Madam Mayor to the councillor. I'm just trying to pull it up. I'm going off of memory. So in Blackstock, an hourly rate, I know I might be quoted on this, but I'd love to say it's around $127.
Adult ice time of $228 and youth ice time of $195. From my memory attending the charrette, I believe the cost of ice rental, even at the current rates, were considered quite high by the current users. Will this not negatively affect the desire for the current user groups to use this facility? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Cornish?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I know that has been brought up when we were speaking to the user groups, especially over in Blackstock during the community, before the community group met. I did call all the user groups to get a feel of what their proposed usage would be. That was a question they asked and was answered that the proposed ice rates would be closer in line with the ice rates of SCRC because of the size of the ice surface. So they were aware of it and still provided some usage times and how much they would want to be used. It would be used by their user groups. Thank you.
Further, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps a question for the consultants. I'm just looking in the report. It mentions a lot of people coming over from the western areas of Scugog, Port Perry, particular, to the arena. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions and the green natures of the building and the parking lot, will the green, the green offsetting credits of the building, will that offset the carbon footprint of the drivers driving over from Port Perry to the arena facility?
Nick or Robert, I believe that was addressed to you. If you have an answer.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. It's a question that's, I think, tough to answer at this point, just based on where the users are coming from and what the building will end up at. It's to be looked at that the building itself we would try to do our best to generate a net zero carbon facility if that were the intended goal at the time. But I think then, looking at the larger picture of, is private transit going to and from an arena to be taken into consideration? I think it helps to look at the bigger picture. So unfortunately, I don't have a direct, clear answer to that question, and I do apologize. But it's something that should actually maybe be looked at in the bigger realm of things as we do build facilities. But unfortunately, it's a very tough one to measure at this time.
Thank you. Further, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. No need to apologize. Thank you for your answer. No, I agree. It's exactly where I'm thinking and going in terms of, we just had a great presentation about active and safe routes to schools and school travel. So I'm just thinking in terms of that we have a wonderful facility right now today in Blackstock. It needs lots of love and lots of repairs, but it serves the needs of its residents very well in terms of, not producing a large carbon footprint for residents to have to get there. It's in town and it's close for those users who are there now. A further question that I have is just a question, I believe, of the CAO. If we are to vote in favor of accepting this today, the report as it stands, does that mean we're accepting the financial projections for this project as they are?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, it would mean that you're receiving the design as it's put forward, and that we would have to go forward and refine the financial projections for anything else or for future stages as we brought it forward. So even if this project as a whole, the way it sits right now, goes forward, it would be responsible for us to refine both the capital and the operating costs so that we have a better feeling of it and understand what we can and cannot afford. So no matter what we do, we will be doing additional reviews for financial projections.
Further, Councillor McDougall?
That's all at this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. CAO, for your answer.
Okay, Councillor McDougall, when I referred, just to clarify, when I referred that the number one want and the number one need, that was referring to the master plan for the Parks, Recreation and Culture, the strategic master plan. So, of course, roads is our number one need in the township. This is referring just to recreation. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I just would like to thank you, Mr. Swartberger and Mr. Lockhart, for all the preparatory work that you did, enabling us to apply for grant funding that would be necessary to bring this municipal project to completion. The public consultation was really well attended. There were so many of us there. I got so many emails in support, as did our MPP, Lindsay Park, like the one from Ms. Lang on November 6, 2019, who wrote, I'm so excited about the renovation possibilities after the public meeting. I want you to know how excited we all are. Blackstock is our family's forever community, and this type of facility is desperately wanted and needed for our community. I hope the township will still work hard to fulfill this need for our town. There's so many groups like our curling club, skating club, daycare, Egg Society, the tractor pull, the fair, the Lions Club events, Kawartha conservation workshops, facility rentals, celebration of life, weddings, business meetings, and so on. I especially want to thank the Mississaugas of Scugog Island who wrote a letter of support for this application December 10th, 2019. In your design, is there an opportunity in the future to finesse the preliminary designs to incorporate our First Nations history and tell their story a little bit in the design display?
Robert or
Yeah,
through you. Yeah, I was going to say, I think Nick has an answer for that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Madam Mayor. To that question, actually, yes, it was actually something I think that was brought up initially at one of the public consultations, and I remember it being brought up further along the design process. It sort of started off slow, and then we got into the fall and realized that there's an 8-week deadline looming over our head. And
Right, I remember that.
A lot of involvement was taking place, but definitely because I think there was, from my preliminary notes, to incorporate some of the First Nations of Mississauga of Scugog Island, whether that be done through awareness, reconciliation, have you. Something to be incorporated within the building, whether that be in a multi-purpose space, in some of the circulation and community spaces, as you see in the images of the large lobby areas that would occur if this project were to go forward. But definitely it's one of those things that you would incorporate, and especially into the further design phases as a project like this gets refined, if that helps to answer your question.
Yes, further through you, Madam Mayor, the MSFIN expressed their wish to host their national Aboriginal hockey tournaments, Indigenous art shows, competitions, to host a lacrosse league specifically. In this gymnasium design, is it possible with the preliminary design to still make some modifications if we have the privilege and the pleasure of proceeding with this project?
Thank you, Councillor, through Madam Mayor. Definitely yes. I mean, right now, I mean it's exactly what you stated. It's a preliminary design.
Okay.
And it still would go through many stages, many reviews back to that public consultation. I mean, as as I was aware 2 weeks ago, I hadn't looked at this project probably for about a year, to be honest with you, at least. I was actually had to dig it out of the files because so many other things have come up within that, and it's almost like the world feels like it's 5 years ahead. But definitely there's a design process that still goes forward if the project were to, and a rethink almost of currently as a foundation of what we had would be acceptable.
Discussions are, Madam Mayor and Regional Councillor Watt, and I appreciate that. I just would like to thank you for your report today and the work that you did, especially for all of the green design. With this federal Green and Inclusive Community Building Grant Program that staff currently have opportunity to apply for, do you think that the more carbon neutral project that you're presenting to us would make our application more appealing? And do you think that the inclusive aspect of it, considering the range of peoples that this facility would support, do you think that that would make our application more appealing for funding?
Who would like to answer that?
If I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please.
Yes,
CIO.
so that the carbon footprint, the focus on reducing it is actually part of the requirements of the grant, and as well as accessibility is one of the requirements of the grant, and it talks about serving underserviced areas, and that, you know, in terms of inclusiveness for the MSIFN, MSISFN, it would also fall within those criteria. So I think generally the approach has been good and supports the grant program well.
Thank you. Just one further comment, if I may, Madam Mayor. I just would like to thank you for the timber design integration. I think that has a carbon impact as well as being a really nice mirroring design, because the current ice pad is very historic, going and has timber accents, although yours are a lot more impressive. Can you comment on that aspect? And thank you.
Sure, I can handle that. Thank you, Councillor and Madam Mayor. Yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, again, it is preliminary design, but I mean, one of the large aspects, and I don't know how many people look into sort of net zero carbon design or sustainability going forward, but mass timber is really an industry that's come a long way. It started in Europe about 15-20 years ago on a newer production level, and has recently within Canada and the US has really taken off on some key projects. The Canada Green Building Council website has a good showcase of them, as they are, you know, as we look towards becoming a little more responsible for our energy costs and energy consumptions, as we head towards the future, that mass timber definitely being, you know, a large, you know, resource within Canada, definitely has a potential, and it is a really strong component, as I mentioned, in a net carbon zero design. If that helps to answer your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Further, Councillor Kiesebrink?
No, that's all, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lockhart, you have your hand up. Did you wish to add something? Mr. Lockhart?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I wanted to add something to the comment about the cost of travel, the carbon cost of greenhouse gas cost of travel. Hopefully, as we move into the future, we're going to see many more vehicles, whether they be personal automobiles or whether they be, you know, school buses, all powered by battery electric or hydrogen electric. And so the carbon footprint of traveling around will be reduced dramatically. So that's something else to keep in mind as we look out, you know, 5 to 10 years and expect that, you know, 25 to 50% of our vehicles on the road are going to be those types of vehicles. So just something to add to what Nick mentioned about how we can reduce some of those costs or some of those pollution levels and greenhouse gas emissions through a different kind of fuel that we put in our vehicle. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. CAO or Ms. Cornish. On the financial projections report, it shows the wages and benefits line increasing significantly with the new Blackstock Community Center. I wonder if either of you could speak to what the staff complement would look like in this facility.
Through Madam Mayor to the councillor, Ken, if I could start with this, and then if Ken can, if Mr. Nix can add on, I hope that's okay. But in a single pad, we looked at our staffing that we would need and needed before our second pad. So we used that as kind of our base on what we would project our staffing level. So we would need right now an increase of a couple full-time operators. This is all proposed. And if with the gymnasium space there, we would look at another recreation programmer and recreation staff, student staff to be putting forward those programs.
Thank you. Mr. Nix, you got something to add to that?
Only that there is a listing. There's a list of positions in one of the attachments. I'm sorry, I couldn't quickly find it.
Right, and I didn't know if that was referencing our existing facility or if that was the proposal, because it spoke to Director of Communications, and I didn't know if it was meant for the new facility or what overarching combined facilities would be using.
And that's thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. I would need to discuss that with Director Coleman to see what's incremental and what's not, because I was not involved in that piece of the puzzle or the details, and I need to understand that myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO and Ms. Cornish. Yes, an increase of $520,000 is a significant increase in our wages. And I know specifically I'd asked back in 2019 when we first saw this if a manager would need to be hired to manage the facility, and we were told no at that point. So I was just wondering if at some point that decision had changed. Mr. CAO, I appreciate you weren't here back in 2019 when my comments were made, but I feel like my comments are going to be similar to as they were in 2019. And I think if we polled every single resident in Scugog, every resident would love a beautiful new facility in their hamlet or town. But my question is always about the long term and the managing of the expenses and the operating of the facility for the next 5, 10, 15 years, not just the build. And I really hope that at some point we will be able to see a fulsome report as to what we think the taxpayers will be responsible for to carry the cost of a new facility for the long term, not just the build or the design of that. And my follow-up question would be likely to Ms. Cornish. We've heard throughout the presentations the hockey tournaments. Is the assumption that the tournaments would then be ran at both facilities?
Ms. Cornish?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I think the assumption that we could now host, the township could host tournaments is because there would be a hotel. There's a proposed hotel within this in Scugog, maybe 2 locations. So that would help bring tournaments and how they stay here for the weekend to fruition here in both facilities. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, because I'm sure, as you can appreciate, there's not that many tournaments that could survive on one pad alone. You would need multiple pads in order to host a proper tournament. And then I guess my follow-up question would be again to the CAO, just wanting to understand that given the current pandemic and what we've been through the past year, if this is still what we feel confidently is our priority that we need to be looking at, not discounting all of the work that's gone into it, but realistically, every company and household is having to do a reevaluation as to what they think their priorities are, understanding that staff's workload has increased tremendously due to the increased requirements because of the pandemic and COVID. Do we still confidently think that this is what we call our top priority from the Scugog master plan perspective? And do we think this is the best use for our staff to be focusing on as far as priorities?
Mr. Nix?
If I'm through you, Madam Mayor. All we can really do is in terms of determining whether it was a priority, was talk about what council has directed in the past. I do believe that if or when we do come forward with a project or an options for consideration, I think at that time council can reconfirm whether it's still the highest priorities for council or not. And the reason I say that is because we haven't gone through, we would have to go undertake a full new recreation master plan, taking into account today's environment in order to get council to definitely confirm it's a priority or not. But in the short term, the opportunity for moving forward at a grant would require council as a whole to determine whether it is the highest priority for Scugog.
Further, Councillor Guido?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. CIO, for that response.
Thank you. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Got a couple questions here. Hopefully not too many of them require Director Coleman's responses, but we'll do our best. I guess overall, just so everyone understands the lens I'm looking at, is that wouldn't it be great to have a facility like this in our community, but wouldn't it be horrible if we couldn't afford it? Most of my questions here are just in regards to cost versus revenue. The first one, maybe one of the presenters could answer this, is the projections start at a mature state, 3 years into the future. And we're looking at a net loss for the township at that point. Between year 1 and 3, what are we looking at? There's no reference to what kind of revenue or what kind of costs we're looking at. What's to be expected in the first 3 years?
It's Robert Lockhart here. I can probably respond to that to some extent, unless someone else wants to jump in. Would you like me to proceed?
Please go ahead. They can
Okay,
put their thinking caps on.
So through you, Madam Mayor, we didn't do a 5-year, what's called a 5-year pro forma projection, which would take us from year 1 through year 5. At the time, because the grant application was putting us under so much time pressure to get it done, that it was going to take too long to do that. So we instead started with year 1, but didn't show it on paper, and then projected out to year 3 just to get us there in a hurry. Certainly, the revenue would be lower, the costs would be similar, maybe a little bit lower because of inflation. But it would take a little while to ramp up the revenue side, because you kind of start with just the arena. Now you have a better one, so obviously you have more prime time and non-prime time to rent. You have better summer floor time to rent. But the other components, like the indoor walking track and the multi-purpose spaces, gymnasium, and so on, are all going to have to be programmed and promoted. And it'll take a little while for that to happen. So it will take a bit of time for the revenue to ramp up to sort of the mature state. And then from that point forward, your facility should be running at a fairly full capacity, and inflation then would judge how your revenue would change and how your costs would change. So that's generally how it works.
Ms.
Madam
Cornish?
Mayor?
Yes,
Madam
please,
Mayor,
Mr.
if I could add. I'm glad Mr. Lockhart talked about the 5-year projection, because it is something we would have to undertake in order to bring something forward to council so they can make an informed decision. I'm assuming it was done, just not communicated, probably because of all the rush in the past. But it is, when I talk about needing to relook at our assumptions, our costs, our revenues, both operating and capital, we will need to understand exactly that question.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Ross?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I think an informed decision is the key here, looking forward. Yes, in regards to the build, there's a 15% overage that is included, just in case. In listening to the presentation, there's a lot of talk about the mass timber and how that's going to be really nice to add to the whole project. The price of timber has gone up 130% in 9 months. How do we afford this 15% overage if you have material costs that are out of the townships, out of any project manager's sphere of influence? How do you account for that kind of raise? Not knowing what will happen in the future, but if we're over 15%, where does that money come from? And what is the plan B should we find ourselves over 15%?
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the impact of the timber on the project, I would have to leave it up to the consultants. I know they did mention previously that they have seen significant escalating costs in some of the projects they have on the go at the moment. In terms of where it comes from, if we knew, obviously we have to update our costs, as I mentioned, but based on current markets. And if they're covered before we put in the grant and the grant was successful, then we would know what we're sharing and what the government's sharing. If costs continue to escalate after the grant is submitted, it would be on the hook of the township.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. So if we're on the hook, the township's on the hook, is that worst case scenario, or that's kind of a undesirable event, but is that we're looking into diving into reserves, or is it maybe you just fill me in a little bit more as to what we're looking at if we're on the hook for it?
We would have to look at various things. We'd have to look at obviously the design and see if it could be if we could find some savings within the design, savings that wouldn't cost us more in the long run, but maybe change in materials, change in scope or design a bit, so it doesn't offend the grant that's gone in. But we would also have to look at other sources of financing, debentures, use of other reserves that are available.
Okay, great, thank you. Maybe just moving on from that question to kind of parlays into the next one, is that a question for the presenters. Council voted a while ago for arena preliminary drawings and concept, which you've obviously provided, and that's great. That was to replace the older arena that we have, and now what's in front of us is something a lot more than that. If it's at the end of the day, council can't justify the capital and operating expenses once they've been relooked at and poured over, is there a possibility to provide a scaled down version that's in front of us now that's acceptable for the community?
One of our presenters can answer that, please.
Yeah, I can answer that. Thank you, Councillor, through you, Madam Mayor. I think as we're talking today, I mean, the presentation was based on a program and a desire and working with numbers that worked back for the grant back in 2019, and obviously a lot of strong community need was identified through all that public consultation, and that's great. But if I think it would, to look forward onto a future grant or a future direction, I think, the start would have to be retooled a little bit and say, okay, what are the immediate needs and what are the what's the affordability, for the township yourselves to what type of project is it? Is it a $10 million project, a $15 million project, a $20 million project, and then reevaluate that with, current costs, because you're right, as one of the previous councillors has mentioned, the costs are, I'm not going to shy away from it, astronomical right now, with materials and labor and everything else going up, as we see sort of demand still be there. So I think definitely there's a way to review a project and retool it. It's just a matter of does it meet what the current and future needs within the township through yourselves as a council want to present, if that helps to answer.
No, it does. I appreciate that answer. I think it's not a simple answer by any stretch. So no, thank you for that. While I've got you here, I guess a question on the usage in your presentation throughout the document that's provided to us as well. There's numbers from 2012 to 2017 that show a decline in usage, about 7%. That's in Blackstock, but Ontario as a whole and Canada as a whole, we have a decrease in the participation in hockey. Has that been looked at as far as revenue generation, in that although prime time, we're looking at a number of hours where Scugog rec complex has 89%, and with an assumption that Blackstock will receive that, we're looking at the majority of the day with the ice rink being vacant, with numbers being decreased. What is the last 4 years projections up to even 2019 pre-pandemic with those numbers? And if numbers keep going down, what does that do to the revenue, I guess?
Ms. Cornish, can you tackle that one?
Yeah, I can try, but I think yes, Madam Mayor, I think I can try, but I think Robert can help with, he has his hand up, and I know he has some historical, just on how some trends are moving, maybe away from hockey, not just solely on hockey, and I could add to Robert after he's done.
Okay, that's fine for the local perspective. Okay, Robert, please.
Okay, so thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. One of the things we have to keep in mind is that when we look at national trends, they are in fact national. Okay, so depending on what's going on in each local community, some communities can buck those trends. They can either be higher or lower, depending on how well organized a community is in running a particular program like hockey or lacrosse or figure skating or skating for older adults. Pick anything you want that would fit in an arena type facility in the summer and in the winter. So, you know, what we looked at was, you know, what's going on in your community? What kind of growth are you expecting? This facility won't come online for, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how long it takes to get it up and running. So that there's time for things for demand to grow. And it's as well, there's a lot of excess demand within the region that's looking for ice surfaces, whether it be City of Oshawa or other communities as far away as Lindsay, who are looking far and wide for ice time because their communities can't afford to provide another ice surface. So, you know, we looked at it all and realized that a shiny new building is going to, onto its own, attract a lot of attention, and felt that there's likely enough demand locally that will grow into it, and also the backfill in the short term with possibly some regional uses until local demand catches up. The thing about adding a new ice surface to a community is that sometimes there's not all the demand you need right there on day one, but that it will grow as time goes on, and as your local hockey and other ice skating organizations you know, develop their program and are attracted to the new facility. So those are all things. There's a lot of uncertainty in there, but we think that with a good new facility, ice surface facility in Blackstock, that it will complement what you have and provide an opportunity for quite a bit of use made of it, both in prime time and non-prime time. So that's generally it. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's sort of my general comment.
Thank you. And Ms. Cornish, can you add something local?
I can, Mayor Drew, thank you. And to echo a little bit of what Robert said, but from a local point of view, we have over the last 3 to 3 years since I've been in the recreation, we do get that demand from other municipalities. We have a lot of calls from Clarington and the city of Kawartha Lakes that are further to the east, looking for some ice, and so we do have that demand for hockey. But even Councillor Kieserbrink mentioned lacrosse with some, so that's the summer ice pad, lacrosse, and ball hockey have shown an interest in the community to use that facility. So daytime programs, as Councillor Ross mentioned, we can fill them. We do in the SCRC. We have lots of daytime programs available. It's whether we could get people to come over there, and that would be up to our rec programmers to just kind of maybe program that facility slightly different to attract some users in the daytime for ice. Thank you.
And Ms. Cornish, to that point, with the SCRC. What is the usage in prime time? Or what was?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yep, so the last 5-year average for primetime ice in the SCRC is 89%, and it's 73% in Blackstock.
Yeah, because it's not a full size, probably, yeah. Okay, further, Councillor Ross?
Yeah, if I may just, thank you, Ms. Cornish, for that. That's fine. Robert, I just might push back a bit on what your comments were here, though, because what your report says and what I've just understood you say are two different things. So just some clarification, please. You say what's happening nationally isn't necessarily what's happening locally, but in the report, we have over 5 years, we have a 7% decrease in the hours used here. So that would suggest that we're continually going down. The assumption of lacrosse and other forms of sport coming in is fine. We haven't seen that yet, so they're only assumptions. But from the data I've been given here, it shows that we're decreasing, so that we are actually mimicking the national average, if not greater than that. So if we continue on this trend, and like I said, the numbers from 2017 to 2019 are in the report. Ms. Cornish, you provided the 89%, but I guess maybe you could just go further, Mr. Lockhart, just into your comments, because I don't see the numbers supporting your statement.
The only thing that I would add, Councillor Ross, is that by the time this is built, and even before, we've got a lot of growth in the township, and usually that's a lot of young families coming. So there is that potential as well. Robert, did you have something you wanted to add?
Certainly, a couple of things. I have to certainly pick up on your comment about the growth in new residents coming into the community. It might even exceed what you're proposing right now, because we're seeing a trend across Canada, and certainly in Southern Ontario, of movement out of the GTA into smaller communities like yours and mine in Peterborough. And it doesn't matter where you go, we're seeing tremendous increases in the number of people leaving the GTA to move to smaller communities if they're able to do some working from home and commute less often. That could put some interesting demand on housing in your community and even in Blackstock, even though there may not be anything showing right now. And certainly most of the new residents are going to be families with children and teenagers. And when you look at the demographic profile of your community, you've got a very, very low percentage of visible minority population. It's a very high percentage of European mix. And those are all indicators of above average demand for things like hockey and figure skating and lacrosse and other activities. So although we don't know for sure, we don't have a crystal ball, it's likely that those programs could be grown. And if you have a facility that looks and works a lot better than the one you have in Blackstock, just because it's an old and really substandard facility, it will become less and less attractive each year. And if you replace it with a new facility that is the best in town, it will attract more use from your own community and from the region. So it looks like demand for at least primetime ice, and certainly quite a bit of non-primetime, will increase if you have a new facility and if you have the kind of growth that you could be expecting. And if it's well organized, if you have well organized local organizations who are able to promote their sport well with a new facility, that's going to help grow it. So I think some of that trend that you're seeing is because of the old facility and a few other factors that could be at play that we may not know all the details of in your community. But it looks positive as I look forward for this facility.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Ross?
Yeah, we'll leave that. I'll just a point of clarifications in regards to the recommendations in front of us. Point 3, I just want to make sure that I've understood that within that, that staff are reviewing the options for an application for funding under the federal Green and Inclusive Community Building Grant. And then it says related to the proposed replacement. The proposed replacement, is that what we have in front of us now, or is, from what I've heard so far, staff will take this back, they'll look at the options that fit the grant, that fit the community, that fit the budget, and they'll come forward to council. Is that correct, Mr. CEO?
Yes, to you, Madam Mayor. We intend to come back with some options for council, and the pros and cons of those options for council to consider. Does that answer your question, Councillor Ross?
It does. Yeah, no, the reason for my clarification is that I think there's a great report that we have in front of us here, but there are a lot of assumptions and a lot of unknowns. And as Nick stated, this has been in a drawer for a while and has not been updated as far as financials with what we're going through currently and have been through. So I think just want to make sure we're not committing to more than we have in front of us. So thank you, everybody, for your answers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ross, and I see no further questions. Could we put the recommendation up? Thank you very much. Do I have a mover, please, for the recommendation and a seconder? Councillor McDougall moving, seconded by Councillor Kiesebrink. Can we call the question, please?
Madam Mayor, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, Councillor McDougall?
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Oh, okay. Recorded vote called by Councillor McDougall. Madam Clerk, do I call them one by one or do you?
Actually, recorded votes aren't permitted in GPA.
Oh, of course. It's been so long since we've had one, I had forgotten. Thank you. Well, you can see it up on the screen, Councillor McDougall.
Yes. And voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor
Watting voting in favor. Thank you.
Councillor Guido? Oh, got it. And we're just waiting on Councillor Brown.
In favor.
Perfect. Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor McDougall's voting against, and the rest in favor. Thank you very much. That is passed. And I would ask, perhaps we could have a 10-minute break. How about it's 4:02 now. How about we come back at 4:15, and we'll carry on from then. I don't think it'll take that much longer, but I think our recording secretary may want to have a little bit of a break, as well as me. So return at 4:15. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and I'll call on our clerk to do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Drew is present. Councillor Watton, are you present?
I am present.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall, are you present?
I'm present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guido, are you present?
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross, are you present?
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiesenbrink?
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Brown?
Present.
Thank you. We do have quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And we'll, I don't know whether our guests are still here, but certainly we thank them very much for their presentation this afternoon and all the work that they've done for the township on this issue. So we'll move to the consent agenda, and I have pulled 10.1.1, 1.3, 1.6, 1.8, and 10.2.1. Are there any other polls? Councillor Brown?
I don't need to have 10.1.6 pulled unless somebody else does.
I think Councillor Watton was going to pull it as well.
Okay. Never
Thank
mind.
you. On the rest, all those in favor of the recommendations, Councillor Brown, are you making that motion?
I will do so.
And Councillor McDougall seconding it. All those in favor? I beg your pardon? Is that you, Councillor Ross?
No, it's Councillor McDougall saying I will second that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I got your hand, thank you.
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Thank you. Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. We'll now move to 10.1.1, and Councillor McDougall has called that. Would you like to make the motion, Councillor McDougall?
I will make the motion, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Can we put the motion up, or shall I read it?
It's up. I'm displaying it now, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and that's seconded by Councillor Watton. And this is on the federal gas tax funding. Councillor McDougall, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question, and it's with regards to the federal gas tax funding. In the report, it says that we receive, I believe, $655,000, $778. Is this the only funding we receive from outside the municipality for taking care of our roads?
Oh,
Madam Mayor?
no, but I'll call on Director Barta.
Yes,
Please,
through you, Madam Mayor. No, we also receive OCIF funding, which is basically directed, that's provincial, directed towards road projects. And from time to time, other funding becomes available, but those are the main two sources for infrastructure that are recurring.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall, further?
Yes, no, I'm asking the question for a point of clarification, just because I know it's been stated by a lot of road users, particularly those driving automobiles, that insinuate that people who do not buy gasoline do not contribute to the cost of maintaining Scugog's roads. So I was just looking at or considering our $195 million worth of roads needs and seeing how much of that roads needs was contributed to by other levels of government, and if we are getting enough to maintain our roads through the taxes that we pay at the pump. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions from council? Seeing none, can we call the vote, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Thank you. Voting is closed.
Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 10.1.3. And Councillor Ross, was that you? Councillor Ross?
It was. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are you moving the motion?
I am moving the motion. Thank you.
Okay, and a seconder, please. Councillor Watton. Thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor Ross.
Quick question in regards to the doubling in building permits. Just wondering, I don't know, Director Heritage is the right person for this. Has that increase resulted in a delay in the amount of time that permits are being issued right now?
Director Heritage? You're on mute, Director. He must be having some technical difficulties. Mr. CAO, can you help out with that?
I can, in general. In general, the answer is yes. It has resulted in delays in terms of more details related to how long and other contributing factors. I can't add that. Director Heritage would need to. We can easily get that information to council in an email if council so desired.
Yeah, an email would be fine, and perhaps just maybe just discussion as to if it's temporary or permanent, and if it is permanent, what we're looking at doing in order to shorten that time period. But thank you.
Mr. CAO, can you comment on that aspect of the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We can, in terms of shortening the time, quite frankly, if the activity levels and demands stay consistent or high, we will need to add resources in order to reduce the times. But again, I will ask Director Heritage to comment on that in an email.
Yeah, okay, in an email. I know that I asked this question beforehand, but right now we've actually brought in a little bit more than what we had to put out, and I did ask, and perhaps Mr. CIO, you can answer this. Would that allow us or give us the permission or the ability to hire on a contract basis somebody to help us for the short term to push these permits through? We use that bit of surplus that we've got right now.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that is one of the options that would be available to us in the short term.
Well, perhaps senior management staff can have a look at that. Would that help you out, Councillor Ross?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just with Mr. Heritage not being able to answer, that's fine. An email will suffice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this report? Seeing none, can we call a vote, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have 10.1.6, low income tax rebate, a pilot program for 2021. Councillor Watton, you pulled this. Do you wish to make the motion?
Yes, I will, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor McDougall. Ms. Barta, Director Barta, would you like to highlight anything in this report, what this is all about?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The report was put forward in consultation with our new CAO as a method of providing some of our residents who are really struggling in dealing with low income situations, and also the added costs that are put on these individuals because of COVID. Since the township has received some COVID funding from the province, we felt it may be appropriate for 2021 to do a bit of a pilot program for this year only that would provide a little extra to these individuals to help them pay their property taxes. So that's what's being proposed in the report, is a 1-year pilot. Should COVID extend into 2022 and the province gives us more money, we might consider offering it for a second year. But I think all of us are hoping that doesn't happen. Anyway, that's the shortcut version of it.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Watton, you had a question?
I did, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Barta. When I read your report, it refers to low-income seniors and people on ODSP, and that this grant is designed only for them. Is that correct? Or is it for the general populace as well?
It is specifically designed for those who are receiving assistance because they are low income. So if you are a low income senior, you would be receiving GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement. And if you are on a low income individual with disabilities, you should be receiving the provincial subsidy.
Thank you. That's what I thought. So I have two questions further to that. One is many of the people affected through the COVID pandemic have lost their jobs, have lost their jobs and things like, or their businesses are struggling and so on and so forth. Would it, and I know maybe not something that we are considering, but it seems to me that, these individuals, aside from the groceries being more expensive and some of the expenses, it doesn't quite, I can't rationalize it in my head on the impacts of COVID on them as opposed to our general populace, which to me should be the ones that have kind of fallen into the low income brackets. So that's my first question. What are your thoughts on that? And is it through this pilot project, are we deciding those are the people who should be entitled, or is that kind of a mandate through some other form?
Ms. Barta?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. It is intended mainly for the low income and designed that way because we do feel that the federal government and the provincial government have offered supports to those who have lost their jobs and to businesses in different ways. And these same additional funds have not been offered to low income and seniors who are already on assistance.
Okay. My only other comment would be, and don't get me wrong, I do support this pilot. It's just that I think we would also be creating an expectation unless the government increase the income supplements or the ODSP payments for these people, for the seniors and that are considered low income. I think post-COVID, they will still be in that same position. So I would hate for us to be creating an expectation, and then have to take it back. What are your thoughts on that?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do have some concerns in that respect as well. And I think this is an opportunity to assist, and it is, yes, going to be difficult to say next year that, well, we helped you last year, but we can't do anything. Unfortunately, the reason behind it is COVID. We have the funding, thank you to the province, from COVID funding. And this is one way to assist. We are doing other things to assist businesses in little ways that we can. I want to help in any way we can. I'm not sure there's anything else we can do or anything else we want to do, and making the program as a permanent thing. At least with the pilot, we would know how much that would cost, so council can make an informed decision if they want to continue, but we'd have to figure out where we'd fund it.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, as I said, I feel the same way. I think it's important to support as best we can as a municipality, and that is just a concern. But I guess come budget time, if it's something that has to be considered through the budget process, this council can make those decisions on a renewal of the pilot at that time. So thank you for your report, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watton. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Barta, for bringing this forward. I would just like to echo Councillor Watton's concerns, and I believe that the ripple that we've seen in the last 14 months will continue for those that have had trouble, probably for a little while. I hope not, but I believe it will. So if this has to be brought forward again through the budget process, I look forward to that, and I will definitely be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Director Barta, how do we get the word out? Some of these people don't have the internet, they can't afford it. So I don't know what their easiest method of communication is, probably word of mouth, but I'm not sure how easy that would be for people who might be shut in. So how do we get the word out to these people who are eligible for this?
There's the print media. Director?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I'm proposing, if it is approved today, we are in the process of printing the insert for the tax bills, and it will be highlighted in the insert so that anyone who receives a tax bill and hopefully reads the insert will be aware of it without having to refer to the internet. They can contact the office and we will mail them out an application.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keysebring.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank Director Barta. We appreciate all your hard work. You've had to hit the ground running since coming to join us in Scugog, and this was a big ask. We did ask before for possible solutions, and you've brought us something forward, and the resources are there. So thank you, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers, so can we put the motion is up there and it is moved and seconded. Can we call the vote, please?
Madam Mayor, voting is open.
Thank you.
Councillor Kiesenbrink?
Thank you. I voted in support. Did it not go through?
Oh, there we go. Must be slow. I've got it. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Director Barta. And we will now move to 10.1.8. This is the bylaw to dedicate lands as public highway. That's Marguerite Avenue. And Councillor McDougall, you pulled this. Are you moving it?
Yes, I did, Madam Mayor. Yes, I will move it.
And a seconder, please. I think hands are up there from before. So Councillor Watton, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor McDougall.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And question through to staff. It mentions here that Marguerite Avenue is perhaps in needing of some work to meet municipal standards. When the municipality assumes roads, what point in time would we take into account the cost to assume those roads and the work that would be required to meet the municipal standards?
Mr. CAO, can you answer that, or is Mr. Frasca on the line? Who could answer that? I'll bow to your advice on that, Mr. CAO.
Okay, I can give a general answer, but our clerk should be able to say if someone from Public Works is on the line to be able to answer the question. If not, I can generally talk about it.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Normally, when we dedicate or when we take a responsibility for a road, we would work at, well, we obviously maintain it from an operational point of view, the plowing, sanding, that kind of thing. But we would plan, we would assess the condition and and put that in the priority list of what would need to be addressed through our capital program. I know we've been managing this road for a little bit now, so the operational costs have been included, but I can't comment in terms of the capital upgrades at this point.
Madam Clerk, do we have Rob Frasca on the line today?
We do not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so if there's any further information, perhaps we could send it in an email, because Director Coleman is not able to be with us today. Would that be okay,
Yes,
Mr. Deo?
We'd be glad to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions on this item?
No, that's great. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can we call the vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Watton will vote in favor.
Councillor Kiesebrink will vote in favor.
Councillor Brown will vote in favor.
Councillor Guido?
Guido's in favor.
Thank you. Voting is now closed, Madam Mayor.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move to 10.2.1. We had already spoken of this when I put it on the agenda, but we just need a motion to endorse, please. This is the Highway 412 and 418 tolls. Thank you, Councillor Watton and Councillor Brown. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Can we call the question, please?
Yes. Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And no items for separate discussions, no notices of motion, new business. The only thing I would like to say is our staff and the council do not make the rules for COVID that we're dealing with today, that has people very upset and angry, and many want to push back on this. We don't make the rules, but we do have to make sure that we have to put them into effect. As much as we would like to have things open, we're not able to do that because of the provincial rules. So, and also just that the region of Durham is doing an excellent job of getting needles in arms. But we do have to count on the supply from the province. And if people are experiencing frustration trying to get an appointment, it's because we don't have the supply. Now that is going to improve a great deal from now on. But at this point in time, it can be a little frustrating. So I would just ask for all the frontline people that the public deal with to please be understanding. Everybody is under a lot of stress, and our frontline people hear it every day. So please, when you're interacting with frontline people and our staff and public health staff and the cashiers and whatever, please be understanding and polite and respectful. So thank you very much. There is no other new business, and the proclamations. Could I have a motion, please, to approve those proclamations? Councillor Brown, seconded. Seconder, please. Councillor Watton. Questions or comments? All those in favor, please call the question.
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And that is carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Guido, Councillor Watton. All those in favor? Please call the question.
Voting is open, Madam Mayor. Voting is closed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for members of council for excellent questions and engagement. And thank you to staff for great reports once again, and also to our presenters. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.